What's good, YouTubers? But FloatyReacts, man, back with another video, man. Look, y'all requested that I react to camping horror stories, man. We gonna go ahead and check this one out, man. Let's go.
Step into the story.
Each of these tales are deeply rooted in historical accounts where disappearances, eerie encounters, and supernatural sightings were reported by those who dared to venture into the unknown.
Okay.
These stories are inspired by entities such as the Slender Man, the Wendigo, and the Black Stick Man.
Hold up.
I have crafted narratives that blur the line between myth and reality. Whether these creatures are real or figments of the human psyche remains uncertain, but the fear they invoke in these encounters is undeniable.
I get the water.
These stories are a terrifying reminder that some legends are born from truth, and that sometimes the unknown is watching. Welcome to Sterling Short Stories.
Let's go.
Step inside the story, but only if you dare. Story number 1, they came from the fog. The search teams never found the other two, but they found Liam. Barefoot, shivering, kneeling in the mud just outside his collapsed tent. His fingernails were torn, caked in blood, as if he had been digging. When they asked him what happened, he didn't answer. He just stared into the trees, eyes wide, lips trembling. Listening. Waiting. It started on the second night.
You got the music going with this is hard.
Liam, Jake, and Matt had set up camp
This is
near
the
Lake of
vibe.
the Woods, a remote area in Oregon known for its thick pine forests and heavy fog. The first day had been perfect. Hiking, fishing, a campfire under the stars. But by nightfall, the fog had rolled in thick, swallowing the trees around them. It muffled everything.
Okay.
No wind, no crickets, just the distant ripple of water against the shore. Liam woke first. Something was wrong. The fire had burned low, casting flickering shadows along the trees. The fog had thickened, pressing in on the camp like a living thing. Then he heard it. Footsteps. Soft, slow, circling the tent. At first, he thought it was Jake or Matt. But then, the footsteps split. 2 sets, then 3. They moved together. Liam's stomach clenched.
Right.
Jake,
Mine
he
would
said
too.
anxiously, his heart hammering. Matt, is that you? No answer. Come on, guys, it's not funny. But the footsteps stopped, right outside his tent. He held his breath, listening. Then, a long scratch down one side of the tent, then the other. It stopped. It was silent for a moment, only to continue. The scratching then became violent and frantic, as if whoever or whatever it was couldn't wait to get inside. Liam shot up, fumbling for his flashlight. He unzipped the tent, heart pounding, and shined the beam outside. But there was nothing. The fog curled thick and heavy through the trees, shifting like it was breathing. Then he saw it, the footprints. No way they were human. Too long, too deep. They led away from camp, then vanished into the fog. His breath came in quick, shallow gasps. Jake, Matt, wake the hell up. But their tents were empty. The camp was silent.
He was gone.
And now the sound of footsteps could be heard coming back. Liam had to run. He had no choice. He ran through the fog-filled woods, the sounds of footsteps behind him. Inaudible chatter surrounded him, and he never stopped running. When the Rangers found Liam, he had dug 2 deep holes in the earth with his bare hands.
Dang.
They told me to, he whispered, staring blankly at the ground.
Who's they?
Who? They asked. Liam swallowed hard. His lips cracked into something that wasn't a smile. The ones from the fog. Jake and Matt were never found, vanished without a trace, and poor Liam never left those woods. His body did, but his mind stayed behind, lost in the fog, trapped in whatever nightmare took Jake and Matt.
Dang.
He sits in silence now, staring out of a hospital window, his fingers unconsciously tracing patterns on the table.
Sheesh.
He doesn't respond to questions. He doesn't blink when they say his friends are gone. The only thing he does is whisper. Over and over in a hollow, broken voice, they came from the fog. This story is inspired by the disappearance of Jacob Gray in 2017 at Olympic National Park and the eerie vanishing of Kenny Veach in 2014 in the Nevada desert. Both cases where experienced hikers disappeared without a trace, only for their belongings to be found in perfect condition, as if they had simply stepped away and never returned. Park rangers and campers have long reported strange figures in the fog, unexplained footprints, and voices calling their names from deep in the woods. If you ever camp near an isolated lake and wake to footsteps in the fog, do not follow them.
Right.
And whatever you do not listen when they call your name. Story 2, Dead Man's Trail. They should have listened to the warnings. For years, hikers and campers had whispered about Dead Man's Trail in the Appalachian wilderness. Some said people vanished there without a trace. Others swore they'd seen something.
Okay.
Tall, pale figures standing deep
Slender
in the
Man.
woods, motionless, watching. The rangers never acknowledged the stories, but they never denied them either. Darren, Mark, and Jason weren't the type to believe in ghost stories. They were experienced campers, smart, prepared. When they planned their weekend trip, they laughed at the rumors. The only thing dangerous out here, Mark had joked, slinging his pack over his shoulder, is my cooking. But unexplained occurrences started to happen, leaving them puzzled. It started the first night. They had set up camp near a bend in the trail, just before the dense woods sloped into a valley. The fire crackled as they passed around a bottle of whiskey, joking, telling stories. The woods were alive with the usual sounds, crickets chirping, the distant hoot of an owl.
Yeah.
Then, around midnight, the forest went silent. Darren noticed it first. "Do you hear that?" he asked, voice low. Jason frowned. "I don't hear anything." "Exactly." The crickets, the wind, the distant rustle of leaves, all of it had stopped. Then Mark spoke.
That's
"There's
low-key
someone standing
scary,
in the
bro.
trees." Darren turned, his heart hammering. "What?" Mark lifted his
What?
flashlight, shining it toward the tree line. And there, just beyond the reach of the light, was a figure. It was tall, thin, and motionless. Its skin was pale, almost white, blending into the mist curling between the trees.
Oh, no.
Its arms were long, hanging stiffly by its sides. It had no face, just smooth, featureless skin where its eyes and mouth should have been. It didn't move. It just stood there, watching.
Real deal, some Slenderman, bro.
"Holy shit," Jason whispered. Mark took a step forward. "Hey, you lost or something?" The figure didn't respond. Didn't move, it just stood there.
Nah,
The
that's
fire
OD.
crackled, the silence pressed in. Then, the flashlight flickered on and off uncontrolled. Mark held the flashlight puzzled. The figure moved closer with every flicker, almost like it was teleporting, until it stood 10 feet from them. Still no sound, no movement. Mark swore under his breath. He turned the flashlight off, then on again. Now it was gone. The trees stood empty. The woods breathed again, the wind whispering through the branches. The distant chirp of
Could
crickets
not be
returned.
me, boy. I'd be out of there.
Jason forced a laugh. Jesus, probably just a tree. Darren didn't believe that. None of them did. They didn't sleep that night. By morning, Mark
I wouldn't
was
sleep
gone.
neither.
His tent was still zipped shut from the outside. His boots were beside it. There were no tracks leading away from camp. They searched for hours, calling his name, pushing through the dense underbrush. Nothing. Then Darren saw them, the footprints. Long, thin, deep. They couldn't have been Mark's. They were leading in a circle around their campsite. The two looked at each other, their face pale and eyes wide. They ran. The fear consumed them, and they left everything behind. Tents, gear, food.
I don't think I
It
could
didn't
grab
matter.
anything.
They ran until their lungs burned,
Especially
until
not
the
no
trees
tent.
thinned, and they reached the ranger station. The search teams never found Mark.
What do
But
you
a
even
week
tell the
later,
Rangers,
when
bro?
another group of hikers passed through their abandoned campsite, they found something strange. Inside Mark's tent, scratched into the fabric from the inside, was a message.
Oh, nah.
4 words. "It won't let me go."
That's different.
This story is based on the mysterious disappearance of Joseph Halpern, 1936, New York.
Hey, no.
There were also other reports where hikers vanish without a trace, often leaving behind their belongings, as if they had never left camp. Some who return report unexplainable memory loss, while others describe being watched by figures deep in the woods. If you ever camp along an abandoned trail and notice the forest, go quiet, leave.
Yeah,
And
immediately.
if you see something standing in the trees,
don't
look away. Story
Don't
number
look
3,
away?
The Silent Ones.
I'll be out of there.
I never wanted to go camping. The idea of sleeping on the ground, vulnerable to the elements, always felt like a terrible idea to me. But my friends, Matt, Josh, and Eric, had been planning this trip for weeks, and I couldn't back out without looking like a coward. We arrived at Raven Creek Forest just before sundown. A thick fog rolling over the treetops.
It's always the
like
fog,
a
bro.
slow-moving tide.
Always the fog.
The trees stretched high, their bark gnarled and twisted, giving the forest an eerie presence. Josh, always the most outdoorsy of us, set up the tents while Eric and Matt gathered firewood. I mostly stood there, hands in my pockets, waiting for the whole thing to be over. By the time the fire was roaring, night had swallowed the sky. We sat in a circle, the orange glow of the flames casting long shadows behind us. The air was thick with the scent of burning wood, and the only sounds were the distant calls of owls and the occasional rustling of leaves. Ever hear about the Silent Ones? Eric asked suddenly, breaking the
Silent
quiet.
Ones.
Josh groaned. Come on, man. No ghost stories. It's not a ghost story.
He's scared.
Eric said, grinning. It's real. My uncle told me about it. Said it happened right in these woods. Matt leaned forward, interested. What are the Silent Ones? Eric lowered his voice. They're these things that live out here. Not people. Not animals.
Stings.
They just watch. They don't make noise. They don't move. Not when you're looking at them anyway. But turn your back for a second and they'll be closer. They don't attack, at least not right away. They wait, make you paranoid, make you go crazy. Then, when you're alone, he dragged his finger across his throat. The fire crackled,
Sheesh.
and for a moment none of us spoke. That's just some campfire BS, Josh said, throwing a stick into the flames. Eric shrugged, maybe. But something about his tone unsettled me. That night, I had trouble sleeping. The tent felt too small, the walls too thin. Every sound outside made me flinch. A branch snapped in the distance, then another, closer this time. My breath hitched. Probably just an animal. I turned over, forcing my eyes shut. A few minutes passed in silence, then footsteps. Soft, slow, deliberate.
Not the footsteps.
I held my breath, my fingers clenching the sleeping bag. The footsteps stopped just outside my tent. I waited, heart hammering against my ribs. Then, nothing. Minutes passed, then hours. Eventually, exhaustion pulled me under. The next morning, I woke to find Josh gone.
Nah.
At first, we thought he had just wandered off to relieve himself. But an hour passed,
Nah,
then another.
Josh.
His bag was still there, his shoes right outside his tent.
Oh, they did my job. They did my
Eric
boy
was the
Josh
first to
dirty.
suggest it. What if it was them? Matt rolled his eyes. Oh, come on, there's no such thing as... Guys. I cut him off, pointing toward the tree line. Standing there, half hidden in the mist, was a figure. It was tall, unnaturally thin, with elongated limbs that looked like twisted branches. Its face, or what should have been its face, was smooth, featureless. It didn't move. It just stood there, watching. I blinked, and another appeared. Then another. 5 of them now.
Nah.
Matt stumbled backward. No, no way! We have to go, Eric whispered. We grabbed our packs and ran. We didn't stop until we reached the car, lungs burning, hearts racing. Josh was never found. But sometimes, at night, I wake up to silence. The kind of silence that feels unnatural. And in those moments, I wonder if they're still watching. And waiting. For me. This story is based on the Bennington Triangle disappearances. This Vermont region has been linked to multiple disappearances. In 1945, a hunting guide named Mitty Rivers vanished without a trace, despite knowing the terrain well.
Dang.
A year later, Paula Weldon in 1946. She was a college student disappeared while hiking. No clues were ever found. While no scientific evidence supports supernatural causes, the fear of the unknown, whether from disorientation, predators, or something more sinister, continues to fuel both real and fictional accounts of people vanishing in the wilderness. The wilderness is not empty. Something may be watching and something may be waiting, and they may be a lot closer than you think. Story number 4, It Knocks.
It knocks.
The wind
man.
howled through the trees, rattling the old wooden walls of the cabin. Inside, Sam and his younger brother Ethan sat by the fire, their voices low as they talked about the next day's hunting trip. The warmth of the flames filled the room, casting flickering shadows across the walls. Then came the knocking. 3 sharp, deliberate raps against the front door. Sam's voice trailed off mid-sentence.
Okay.
Ethan looked up, eyes wide. They weren't expecting anyone. The nearest road was miles away, and no one, absolutely no one, would be wandering this deep into the Montana wilderness at this hour.
Right.
A second knock followed. From the back door. Sam shot to his feet, his chair scraping against the wooden floor. He grabbed the hunting rifle from the wall and held it tightly.
No cap.
"Who's there?" he called out. Silence. Then footsteps. Slow, deliberate, moving around the cabin. Ethan's breath hitched. He stepped toward the window, hesitating before parting the curtains. Outside, the forest was thick with fog.
The
tree
fog,
line
bro.
barely
Always the
visible
fog,
through the
bro.
mist. His breath fogged up the glass as he scanned the darkness. Nothing. Then something moved. A figure stood just at the edge of the trees. It was tall, too tall, pale and just wrong. Its skin was smooth and stretched too tightly over its elongated frame. Its eyes were missing, nothing but deep, empty sockets. But what made Ethan's blood run cold was its smile, too wide, too unnatural. He stumbled backward, knocking over a chair. Sam rushed to his side. What did you see?" Ethan turned back to the window, pointing, but the figure was gone. Then the knocking started again. Louder, more insistent. And this time it wasn't just at the doors. It was coming from all sides of the cabin.
Hey, no.
For what felt like hours, they stood frozen, listening. The knocking never stopped, shifting from door to door, wall to wall. The fire flickered wildly, their shadows dancing across the wooden walls. Then, without warning, the fire dimmed, as if something had sucked the air from the room.
Sheesh.
The cabin fell into eerie darkness for the briefest moment. And when the flames flared back to life, it was inside. Standing between them and the door, Ethan couldn't breathe. He couldn't move. The creature stood impossibly still, its grotesque, stretched mouth curling into that same unnatural grin. It didn't speak. It didn't move. It simply raised one long skeletal hand, fingers too thin, too sharp, and knocked 3 times.
Nah, boy.
From inside the cabin, they found Sam 2 days later.
Nah, Sam,
Ethan was
bro.
missing. The search teams combed the woods for weeks,
Ethan
but
missing?
no trace of him was ever found. Not a footprint, not a scrap of clothing, nothing. The cabin door was still locked from the inside. And the only clue left behind was a series of scratches on the wood, carved deep into the door. Only a single word: knock. This story is loosely based on
Knock.
encounters reported in Montana's remote wilderness. Several hunters have vanished under bizarre circumstances, often leaving behind untouched cabins or campsites. In 2014, Crazy Mountains, Montana, a man named Aaron Hedges, who was known as a seasoned hunter, went missing in an area he knew well.
Dang.
His boots were found neatly placed miles from his last known location, with no tracks leading away. His remains were later found in a place previously searched multiple times. In another case, the Martin family, 1958, Flathead National Forest. A family staying in a cabin reported knocking on their doors and windows at night before the father disappeared. His body was never found. Too many have disappeared without a trace. Too many have left behind nothing but eerie silence, the last echoes of their voices lost to the endless dark. Their footprints simply end, swallowed by the mist. Their campsites are left untouched, fires still burning, food still warm, as if they had only stepped away for a moment,
Sheesh.
but they never return. And then there are the others, the ones who are found. They don't speak of what happened, They don't remember how they got lost or how they came back, but they change. They wake in the middle of the night, trembling. They whisper about things standing just beyond the tree line, about pale figures with hollow eyes and smiles stretched too wide. They swear they still hear knocking on their windows, even miles away from the forest. If you hear knocking at night, do not answer it. If you see something standing between the trees, do not look away. And if you ever feel that gut-wrenching, skin-crawling sensation that you are being watched, run. Because once the woods have marked you, they do not let go. Thank you for watching Sterling Short Stories.
Hey,
Please
man.
like and subscribe.
Sterling
but only
Short
if you dare.
Stories, man. Went crazy with this one, man. Gonna have to check out some more of these, man. These are tough. Hey, man. I'm gonna leave a link in the description to the original video. Y'all go ahead and watch that. Go check it out. And go check out all of his other videos, man. Shout out Sterling Short Stories. Go check them out, man. Hopefully I can go ahead and react to some more of these. These are tough, man. Hey, other than that, man, I'm gonna catch y'all in the next video, man. It's been your boy FloatyReacts, man. I'm out this mug. Peace.